Hello there everyone, Stormy Strike here, and once again I'm going to be doing some reviews on various horse movies and shows and such. I've been strangely kind of enjoying doing these kind of little reviews on various horse movies and shows, so I'm going to be continuing doing that here and there. So the two movies that I'll be reviewing today are Storm Rider and Rodeo Girl. We'll go ahead and start off with the movie Storm Rider. Storm Rider is a 2013 movie, and it's about this girl whose father has to go to jail, and then she moves in with her uncle, and then she gets this mule, and then also is training this other horse, and so on. My overall review of this is that it's meh. It's not terrible, but it's not really good either. I mean, it's fine. It's an okay movie. Like, I'm not saying it's good, I'm not saying it's bad, it's just kind of okay. It's not one that I want to watch again, honestly. Like, I really don't care to ever see this one again. And part of the reason why I had to review this movie, though, was because the mule in it is actually named Stormy, and I was like, what? I'm named after a mule! So, that was kind of cool. I will give the movie props for the fact that there is a mule character in it, I guess you could say, and the fact they used a mule is, I think, pretty awesome, since there isn't that many movies or horse movies that have mules very often. So I thought that was pretty cool, that they kind of brought in a less used kind of animal, and the mule is kind of a hero in the story, sort of. So I thought that was cool. That was one thing I will give the movie props for. There were definitely some things I didn't really care for in this movie, though. For example, there's a couple scenes that I was just like, really? One scene involves a wolf, and it's just like one wolf, and I'm kind of like, okay, does nobody understand here that usually a lone wolf does not go out and do this? Usually wolves in a pack, maybe. Even then, why are we demonizing wolves in this story? It's just, it was really weird watching a particular scene that involves a wolf. Like, the whole time I was just like, what? This is weird. This doesn't make any sense. Another scene I thought was just particularly like, whoa, okay. It almost made me turn the movie off, honestly, because early on they do a flashback sequence with the main character, but like the flashbacks, all of them except for like maybe one, were things that literally happened like 2 minutes ago, less than 2 minutes ago. Like, they literally replayed a scene they just did. Like, seriously, they just did this scene and then they replayed it in a flashback, and I'm just like, what? Do you think your audience is that unintelligent that they can't remember a scene that happened 2 seconds ago? So that part really drove me nuts, honestly. I was just like, really? Come on. They have a few montage scenes as well that I just felt were kind of, I don't know, just not very good, but that's more of a technical standpoint, I guess, but I just thought they were kind of not the best. And the story is, I feel like, a little disjointed sometimes. So again, my overall rating for Storm Rider is just that it's an okay movie. Not super terrible, but it's not exactly really good either. The next movie is Rodeo Girl from 2016. And coincidentally, Kevin Sorbo, I'm sorry if I'm butchering names, coincidentally, he's actually in both of these movies, both Storm Rider and Rodeo Girl, which I did not know while watching them, but then I was just like, whoa, okay, same actor guy. I was not expecting that. But I thought it was kind of weird because he kind of plays the same characters, sort of. Not exactly the same, but they're just very similar characters that he plays in both movies, and I'm just like, okay. So I do need to say that I actually did not finish watching Rodeo Girl. I only watched, I believe, like the first 30 minutes of it, and that was because I just could not take watching it anymore. It was just not very good. So far from what I saw, the story wasn't like terrible, but the story still didn't captivate me enough to finish watching the movie, especially considering how much of like the technicalities that drove me insane. And I'm not talking just like, oh, I noticed all these little things that most people who don't know film stuff wouldn't notice. No, I'm talking about like glaringly obvious problems in this movie. It was just done so poorly. I am honestly not sure what drove me the most insane, if it was the color correcting or the sound, but both were just awful. Now, the color correction, normally people don't really notice this as much, I feel like. And I feel like you can sometimes get away with not so good color correction, depending on what you're doing. But this movie, some of the shots or scenes, they just looked so bad. Like, they were so visually unpleasing that they were making my eyeballs hurt. I'm like, seriously, who allowed this to be approved? Like, who in the production company or whatever was like, oh yeah, that looks okay, send it off to be published? I'm like, no, this looks terrible. Someone has to fix this, at least try to fix it. There were some moments I was just like, really? These shots got approved to go through? They looked terrible. Another thing about the color correction is not just that sometimes the colors actually looked really weird, but just in general, sometimes they would have it where it was way too much like contrast and too dark of shadows. It didn't look good. And then there were a few scenes as well where it was so white, like there was so much highlights and bright white light that it did not look good. It did not make sense. It was just seriously driving me nuts. And the sound was also terrible at points. Not throughout the whole movie, or not the whole I didn't even watch the whole movie, but not throughout all the parts I saw, but there were a lot of parts where the sound was just, really not good. Not done well at all. The dialogue sounded awful sometimes. It was just kind of a bad sound mix sometimes. It was not good. As for what I saw of the story, it was kind of cliche, not really that interesting for me. And I mean, even just from the title, Rodeo Girl, you can probably tell that this movie is probably not going to be very good. And I'm sorry for, like, being mean to it. It's just, I'm being very honest in my critiques of how I thought about this movie. At some points, the acting was okay, and then other points, the acting was really bad, especially at the very beginning. I was just sitting there, I was laughing even at some points of how bad the acting was. The bad sound with the bad acting was just, like, atrocious, in my opinion. I feel like watching this movie makes you appreciate more kind of how much work goes into other movies to make them look good and sound good and just overall be good. This one was just, the editing was also not very great. I mean, it wasn't super terrible, but there were some moments I was like, that probably should have been edited differently. So this is one of the moments where I was mentioning in previous review videos I've done that I will sit here and rant for you about terrible horse movies. And this movie was just, man, they just did such a poor job on the execution of all, like, the technical things that could have been fixed, and I just think that's kind of a shame, because maybe this movie could have been okay, actually, but because of all these technical problems that were just done really poorly, in my opinion, I just could not enjoy this movie at all because of them. Also, I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but if you do like this movie, please don't, like, take it into offense or anything. I'm not saying this movie can't be enjoyed by some people or whatever. I'm just saying that from my viewpoint, I just did not find this movie great at all. And I feel like there are other movies that you could spend your time watching instead of this one. So overall, Storm Rider was an okay movie. It wasn't super terrible, and it looked a lot better compared to Rodeo Girl, I'll admit that. So Storm Rider, okay movie. Rodeo Girl, not such a good movie. And this is kind of on a side note, but I just finished watching Season 2 of Heartland, because I mentioned before that I hadn't watched it yet, and I actually did start watching it. And I love it. Heartland is amazing. I would definitely recommend it. And maybe I'll do a separate review video about that later on, maybe not. I don't know. It's such a well-established show now that I don't know if it needs any reviews or not. But from the first 2 seasons I've watched, I really love Heartland. I'm super addicted to it, and even my parents really like it. And so that show I definitely recommend. Not so much these other 2 movies. Alright, and then that is all now for this little review video. I am planning on doing some more of these little review videos in the future. I have already done a review video on the movie Alban the Enchanted Stallion, and on the Netflix TV series that recently came out called Free Reign. If you want to check out those 2 videos, I will post links to them in the description and at the end of this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have an awesome day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, everyone!